Hey guys, Adeshikoya here again, Agile TV, Agile Alliance 2011, and I'm fortunate to have with me right now, Esther Derby.
Yeah, it depends on when you came to this country, whether you're Derby or Derby.
Ah, okay, because in the UK it's spelled the same way and it's called Derby,
Yeah.
so it's Derby. See, you learn new things every day.
Yeah,
So
my
it's the
family
Derby.
has been in this country since the 1630s, so
Okay.
we're Derbys.
The Derbys.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And yes, so tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I started my professional life as a programmer, and because I was a very good programmer, they made me a manager. The skills that make you a good programmer are not necessarily the skills that make you a good manager. So I had to set about learning how to be a good manager.
Yep.
And I have really focused my attention on working with people and working in systems and how to be effective at both of those.
Okay, so I mean, I know you do some, like you said, you do some work around management and systems. Do you want to kind of elaborate a bit more on that?
Sure. I think one of the big areas where Agile as a set of methods is silent is what happens to the managers when you start having self-organizing teams.
Right, yes.
So some people have said, oh, we don't need no stinking managers, we'll just go off and do what we want to do. And I think that is not actually very helpful.
Okay.
There is still a big role for managers in most organizations, but it's not necessarily telling people what to do on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
So managers get involved in renegotiating the relationship with teams so that they can support the teams, set appropriate decision boundaries, and then really turn their focus to the organization as a whole.
Okay.
So instead of looking down so much, they're looking to the right and the left, and understanding how work flows through the system and how the structures and policies and procedures in the organization really impact the ability of people to get work done.
So from what you're saying there, it sounds like that in an agile environment, that what should ideally happen is that the role of a manager should change.
It shifts a little bit to working on the system instead of focusing solely on people. They still need to work on developing people. That's still a big role for management. But they also need to be focused on making the system work.
Okay. So in your experience, what challenges do you see that managers are experiencing with adoption or transformation into Agile, and how can they overcome those challenges?
Well, one challenge is that when a team becomes self-organizing, it's sometimes challenging for a manager to know when to step in and when not to step in.
Okay.
Right? They're on a balancing act here, and no one ever does that perfectly. There's constant readjustment. But some managers say, well, they're self-organizing out of fear and go too far away, so the team is left feeling like they're on their own. And they're struggling, trying to take care of the sorts of problems they haven't had to deal with in the past, and they don't necessarily have the skills yet. So that managers who do that are stepping too far away. And some managers, at the first sign that something might be going wrong, they swoop in to save the team, and then the team doesn't really get to learn how to take responsibility and to learn from failures. Now, of course, if they're about to do something that's going to cost the company millions of dollars, of course they step in. But there's some discernment in saying, are they on the cusp of learning how to do this? Then you let them do that. Let the team learn.
So are there any strategies, maybe one or two strategies you can suggest to somebody who's listening right now, about how they could actually get that balance right, i.e. not moving too far back when the team needs them and not jumping in when the team doesn't need them?
Yeah, well, one of the things I do with a lot of groups is I help the manager and the team negotiate a set of decision boundaries. Where they look at the sorts of decisions that are made on a regular basis, and they determine which ones the team can make on their own within certain boundaries. If you want to buy a tool and it's under $30,000, go ahead. That figure I just made up. So they might have their own tool budget. They might have their own training budget. Things that they can decide on their own. How they're going to implement a certain feature, right? As long as there are certain cost parameters around it. There might be decisions they make together, like a final decision on hiring a candidate. Right? That might be something that the manager is part of the process, but the team is integrally involved in interviewing and looking at the characteristics of the candidate and assessing the fit for the group. doing auditions to understand how they'll fit in the team and what their skills really are. So that might be a joint decision. And then there are some decisions that are still squarely in the manager's court because they have legal and financial ramifications at such a level that they are within the manager's responsibilities and purview. And those are things that might involve legal agreements around hiring or termination. They might involve things about higher level budget items, so forth and so on. But having that set of boundaries and saying, within this sphere, you can decide whatever you want, helps the team function freely without having to always look over their shoulder and see if if they're about to cross a line, or to have that fear that we're going to cross this invisible tripwire and then get our change. So that's one of the practical, pragmatic things I do to help both managers and teams know the areas that they can work freely in and where they need to work together.
Okay, I mean that's very powerful. What you was talking about that there, that reminded me a bit about a bit like parenting. I.e., when your child gets to a certain age, you give them a little bit more responsibility. You allow them to make certain decisions that you still make as a collective or as a parent. But that's how you kind of empower them and allow them to grow.
Well, I think it's a little tricky to use the metaphor of parenting with teams because we're talking about adults on both sides of the equation. And I think when some managers start to think of themselves as the parent of the team, that leads to all sorts of unhelpful outcomes. But you are right that you need to look at the readiness before you give too much freedom, because that's just a prescription.
What we're saying is you create an environment whereby you're allowing them to show that they're responsible, and the more responsible that they show themselves to be, you're able to give them more responsibility.
Yes, and many managers have actively hindered teams from taking responsibility. So everything that managers do that takes responsibility away from the team perpetuates a dynamic where they aren't responsible. So it's a negotiation, right? It's not just the manager decides. It has to be a two-way street. I think that's one of the things that changes as well for managers is that they need to co-create relationship. It's not just the manager coming in and saying, you're going to work this way, these are the rules, I'm laying them down. It really is a relationship that's negotiated, co-created between equals. They're both adults, even though there are some different responsibilities based on roles.
All right. So I know that you're a writer of a number of articles and a number of books.
Many.
How can people get hold of some of your material, your books, and get some more information about you?
Well, I have many of my articles on my website, estherderby.com. That's ESTHER Derby.com. Some people leave out the H and then it's a chemical compound. I'm not. I suppose on some level I'm a chemical compound.
Yes, we all are.
As we all are.
Correct.
So estherderby.com. Many of my articles and my two books are Agile Retrospectives Making Good Teams Great, which I co-wrote with Anna Larson, and Behind Closed Doors, Secrets of Great Management, which I wrote with Johanna Rothman, and I'm currently working on another one.
Oh, you get to the title now? Do we have to wait?
You have to wait.
We have to wait. Cool. So get on Esther's mailing list so you can find out what this secret book in the making is. And if it's anything like the rest of her books, but I'm sure it will be, it's going to add much value to what you're doing already. So once again, Esther, I want to thank you very much for taking the time out and sharing so much value with us. And I look forward to reading your new book. Thank you very much.